Hello, this is Ailia Zehra. You're watching Nador. We have been bringing you news and perspectives from Afghanistan, where the emerging situation is rather worrying, and there have been various reports about, ever since the Taliban took over Kabul, and we have been hearing concerns from various quarters about how after the Taliban rule, human rights violations will take place in Afghanistan. Women's freedom, the freedom of media and civil society will be at risk, and the Afghan women will not be able to enjoy equal rights, and the freedom they gained over the past few years will be under the Taliban rule. So we have seen how the Taliban have been presenting themselves as reformed people, and they have also been promising that they will uphold women rights. The Taliban spokesman recently addressed media, and he clearly stated that Taliban will not violate human rights, and they will also respect women who want to work as long as they are following the Sharia. So this gives rise to a question that who is going to determine whether or not what women do is according to Sharia, and are Taliban really going to give women all their rights, and or is it just another kind of promise that they're not going to keep? Because we have seen that in the past, the Doha-based Taliban leaders have been saying very progressive things, and they've been promising that they're not going to engage in violence. But then we saw that people were killed, activists were murdered, there were reprisal killings in areas that fell to the Taliban in the past few months. So now that now that Kabul has fallen to the Taliban, we need to kind of discuss what is the future of Afghan people, who are the most important party in this entire crisis. And so we think that it is important to hear from the Afghan people. So today we have with us Maryam Baryalay, who is a member of the Afghan civil society. She is the head of Organization for Social Research and Analysis, which is a Kabul-based organization. Maryam, thank you so much for joining us today. So my first question to you is about the promises that Taliban have made, which I mentioned at the beginning, how they're saying that women are allowed to work. We won't stop them from working, and they just need to follow the Sharia. But then there have been reports on social media from various places in Kabul and other parts of Afghanistan where the Taliban commanders are beating up citizens for raising the national flag. So, do you think that Taliban can be trusted and they will keep their word?
Hi, Alia. Thank you again for inviting me to your program. And yeah, the situation currently in Afghanistan is really bad. And it's actually, the thing is that you don't know where to start from. The situation at the airport, the fall of the city, the entire the districts and the entire security situation is one thing. Then you have the economic situation. Food prices have gone up because borders were closed, and because the ports kept falling to the Taliban and were not under any kind of proper governance and control. And so imports had stopped, and the entire situation is really heartbreaking. For myself, as an Afghan living abroad now, but also I have been working and living in Afghanistan for the past 12 years. It's just painful to watch and to see, and especially the hopelessness and the fear that has gripped the society so deeply. It's really hard. We are kind of mourning, we as a nation, as a people. It's just inside Afghanistan and outside. It's horrible, that feeling of being left behind, and To come back to your question about the civil society and how things are going to be, it's really uncertain at this point. So you have these conflicting and different statements from the Taliban on the one hand, and then also their ground actions really different. In every part of Afghanistan, you have very different. A very different situation. It's not a uniform whole what you're getting from the Taliban, and that leaves you to think and to assume that the Taliban are not a monolithic, unified kind of group. Their political leadership, what they say, as you mentioned earlier, and what is actually happening on the ground with the commanders, there is a great discrepancy between the political leadership and the ground commanders. What's
Right.
happening on the ground? Yeah.
Right. You're right. It's evident that the Taliban have suppressed media, and we cannot freely access the information in many areas. I think the smaller districts where the media is not being able to collect information and find out details, there have been many abuses and excesses are being committed. We have been hearing reports about it on social media and on international media, as on some section of international media. So we were talking about the suppression of civil society. So I have spoken to many Afghan journalists and activists in the past few days, and they've told me how vibrant the civil society of Afghanistan became at one point before the Taliban started making gains. So, could you describe that a little bit? What kind of progress you think was achieved in the past few years, and how vibrant the media and civil society of Afghanistan was? And this is because it is important to know what exactly we have lost in this whole process.
Yeah, I mean, you see, a vibrant civil society is always an indicator of democracy, of grassroots movements, of people empowerment, and they function as a system of checks and balances, against repression, against any kind of injustice that happens in a society. Civil society has that function, and that has been happening in Afghanistan for the past 2 decades. That civil society had grown to a very wide extent, and were contributing immensely to the social change in Afghanistan, and also to the social mindset and change that was taking place, or is still taking place. We are seeing the repercussions, or the results of that change, as you mentioned, the whole Independence Day in Afghanistan, which was on 18th August. With the flags, people coming out and rejoicing and defying. That is a heritage that we have, and that is what people were showing,
Right.
and that is also a result of grassroots movements which were taking place. And as I said, civil society is always an indicator of democracy, and the Afghan democracy has been a very young democracy. We should not forget that, and with all its deep-rooted systemic problems and governance issues and corruption and everything, which has been there, we cannot deny that in any way, or say that or forgive that or forget that. There were major problems with the Afghan government and the entire system, but there were also achievements, and that we feel as civil society is as at great risk. My own colleagues and organization, most of my colleagues, young women who have worked with us, they fear for their lives. I mean, we have shut down our website currently because the work that we did was exactly empowering people. We conducted a lot of large-scale opinion surveys on the intra-Afghan peace negotiations, on people's perception of those, or of the values that are being represented by the Taliban and by the Republic, and then again on the Afghan presidential elections, on the candidates, on their performance. So we did this kind of work, and that kind of work will be difficult in a country where people people's opinion and people don't serve as the legitimate source of power, that'll be very difficult. It'll be very difficult
Right,
for us to continue our work.
right. So certainly, I think independence of media is important, and it is currently being suppressed. Clearly, we can see that many journalists have been intimidated and harassed. Some were also killed in the past few months. Civil society members were threatened, as you mentioned earlier on. So we'll have to wait to see how the things emerge and whether or not Taliban take this seriously and provide security to the people. But as of now, it is clear that there's, despite what the Taliban leaders have been saying, there's a sense of fear among the people, especially those working on the ground. So you mentioned the entire Taliban resistance that is emerging in Afghanistan, and we saw that rallies were held in Kabul on the Independence Day, and people defied the Taliban by raising the national flag. So, do you think that it is going anywhere? It will have this whole movement, the resistance against Taliban. It will have it will deal a blow to the Taliban rule, and they will succeed in their whole campaign to raise voice against the Taliban.
See, one of the main issues is that it's important how the Taliban perform, or how much they keep their promises or of what they have said. One of the main issues is that the fact that the Afghan military and the security forces kind of, in many ways, surrendered in so many different provinces is also an indicator of the fact that the Afghan nation is tired of war. They are tired of bloodshed. And people dying in war, young men dying in war, on both sides, these are young men of Afghanistan, yeah. And be it the Taliban, the Taliban fighters, or be it the Afghan soldiers, the Afghan National Army soldiers, people are just tired. And I think that this resistance, if the Taliban actually managed to create a broad-based, inclusive government and actually hold up their promises of maintaining certain freedoms for the media, for women. Yeah. I mean, I hope, we are still hopeful, though the indicators, unfortunately, right now don't seem to be going in that direction. But we have to hope, that's what we've got left. Because people are so tired. People are so tired of war. And right now, though, in the long term, there are indicators, definitely, that resistance groups could emerge in different provinces of Afghanistan, especially in the non-Pashtun provinces of the north, which has already happened. You have 3 districts in Baghlan province that have gotten rid of the Taliban, districts that had fallen to the Taliban earlier. So you can see this resistance emerging. You have the former Afghan first vice president, who was in Panjshir and who has declared another resistance. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind that the Afghans are very tired of war. The Afghan people are tired of war. And if the Taliban really manage, with other Afghan leaders and politicians, to form something broad-based, a government, that is what we're hoping for. Yeah. But unfortunately, the signs don't seem to be going in that direction, unfortunately. Right. And I think especially the West is not really contributing to this entire change, because the United States announced that it's freezing aid to Afghanistan, a lot of European countries, and IMF. So Afghan assets are being frozen. So all these are not going to be contributing to keeping the pressure on Taliban, because then they will feel they have nothing to lose. Which would most probably lead again to different behavior.
Right. Right. It goes without saying that the international community, especially the US, is not doing what it should have done and to help the Afghan people come out of this crisis. So this brings me to the last question because we're running short of time. President Ghani, the way he surrendered, how is it being viewed by the Afghan people? Did everyone know that this was going to happen? He was going to back off this way, or was it did it come as a surprise to everyone in Afghanistan? Is there a sense of betrayal, resentment towards the former president?
Definitely, definitely. A very deep, deep sense of betrayal and resentment. Uh, I can tell you it came as a shock to to a lot, yeah, to most Afghans that believed in the idea of the Afghan Republic and what Mr. Ghani stood for and spoke very heartedly about the republic, the constitution, and having fled the country like that. Uh, yeah, I mean, he basically induced the entire situation with the chaos that emerged ultimately at the Kabul airport. Uh, this could have been certainly provided had he stayed, and yeah, it's just everyone that I know has kind of been shocked the moment we heard it. I know friends of mine from different, from the U.S., from Afghanistan, from inside of from Europe, from different places. We were all like, oh my God, nobody believed it because he was so committed in the way he spoke, the way he tried to present the whole thing, and then just leaving everyone behind and then just going with his Western allies, especially the people that the young and the educated that believed in the in the republic, in the concept of republicanism. They really felt betrayed and still feel betrayed, and it's just really it's a deep shame.
Right. So we've been watching harrowing videos and photos of the Afghan people trying to escape the Taliban, at Kabul airport. So, and this is clearly a humanitarian crisis. Do you think that the world is doing, it's clearly not doing enough, but what do you think needs to be done to help people who are currently trying to flee Afghanistan? And what do you think can the international community do to help them?
See, first of all, a lot of this could have been prevented. Most of these people eligible to leave Afghanistan that worked in some way or the other for the NATO countries and the United States, they should have been. I mean, the assessment was that the Western nations knew that the situation is going to deteriorate, and it was their responsibility to get the people who helped them on the ground, who were basically their eyes and their ears, to get these people out in time. But Western nations failed here badly, and this is also mainly due to right-wing politics in most Western nations that is currently, they have mostly center-right governments, and migration is always something. At least I know this from Germany right now. The German elections are ahead, and conservative Germans parties don't want more migrants, and that's why they have been preventing this. And the U.S. the same. Migration is a big problem for the West, especially from Muslim countries, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. So we hope that the situation changes for the better in Afghanistan, and the international community writes watchdogs play their role in ensuring that human rights are not violated in Afghanistan, like they were violated the last time the Taliban held power in Kabul. And we hope that the Taliban, as they announced a general amnesty, will follow what they said, and there will be no reprisal killings, and the Taliban will respect human rights. So we'll end this on this session on this note, and I wish we had more time to discuss the whole strategy and everything else, because it is a very complicated situation right now. But we'll certainly try to have your views again. Mariam, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.